Hello friends, this is Vinay Bhat and today I'm going to speak a few words on an introduction to triggers. So first of all, let me explain you what are the objectives of today's presentation. So the objectives are what is triggers, necessity of triggers, when not to use triggers, use of triggers in implementing business constraint, solution to the given problem, syntax of triggers and references. So now let us see what is trigger. What is trigger? Trigger defines an action the database should take when some database related event occurs. That is, database related events means it can be data manipulation through statements such as insert, delete, or update, or it can be database definition through statements such as create, alter, or drop, or it even can be database operation statements such as log on, log off, startup, or shutdown. So this is the brief definition of trigger. Now let us see what is the use. Triggers have various uses, but I'm going to tell you some of the important uses of triggers which are as follows. So first use, it enforces the referential integrity constraint. Second, it enforces the various complex business rules. So here I would like to highlight that how triggers can be used in implementing the various business rules will be explained in the below presentation. Third use, triggers are flexible. Now next, when are triggers executed? Triggers are executed by the database when specific types of data manipulation commands are performed on specific tables. Note that if a user wants to create a trigger on any table, he must have either of the privileges. The privileges are user must either own the table or he must have the alter privilege for the table or he must at least have the alter any table system privilege on the table so that he can create the trigger. Currently, since I have logged in into Scott user, I will be able to create and execute my trigger. Hence, trigger execution and creation will be shown below. Note that the code which we write within the body of the triggers are nothing but pure PLSQL programs. Now let us see when not to use triggers. Triggers are useful for customizing a database. Use them only when necessary. That is, excessive use of triggers can result in complex interdependencies which can be difficult to maintain in a large application. For example, when a trigger fires a SQL statement within its trigger action, it potentially can fire other triggers, which results in cascading of triggers. So this can produce an unintended effects. Hence, we normally don't prefer using triggers frequently. Let me now explain how triggers can be applied to one of the business scenario or problem statement given below. Business constraint is we have to develop a database program which restrict a customer to have only two contact numbers at the most. Customers without any contact numbers are also permitted. So now the question is how do you ensure this business constraint and how do you implement it in an appropriate language? So before moving on to further, I'm going to create a table, say customer detail, with the help of the following clause. Say create table, table name, followed by attributes and its data types. The table what I have created here is customer details, and this is being created with the following sentence. Create table followed by customer details, which is nothing but the table name. And here I'm going to use three attributes. They are name of type variable character, phone number of type number, and address of type variable character. The same can be described using the describe command as shown below. Here I can see once again the three attributes which is being defined inside the table customer detail. So with this prerequisite, let me now explain you How to create a trigger for the given business constraint. Kindly note that trigger can be created on the table as shown below. Create or replace trigger followed by trigger name before insert on customer details. The very first line says that using create or replace clause we can create our own trigger followed by trigger name, and we must mention when exactly the trigger is going to fire an event, that is during which operation, and in this case it is before insert, and on customer details tells you the table name on which the trigger is being invoked. Next, for each row, declare the required variables here, and here I am declaring a variable say phone number count which is of type number. Then the statement or the code which we see within the begin and end block is nothing but a SQL program, and the logic is being written in such a way that it counts the phone number which is being put inside the table, and the count of the phone number will be kept in a variable say phone number count, and the count when it exceeds more than 2, then I'm going to raise an application error which tells the user that each customer should have or can have maximum up to 2 phone numbers, and this is how we can write the trigger. The same has been demonstrated with the help of practical example also. You can see the snapshot of it. That is create or replace trigger. Customer phone number count is nothing but the name of the trigger. Before insert is the operation, and on customer detail is nothing but the table name. For each row, I'm going to declare a variable say phone number count of type number. I will select the count of phone number. Phone number is nothing but the attribute on which I'm going to choose it. So I will count the phone number and store it in a variable say phone number count from the customer details table. If the count exceeds more than 2, then I'm going to raise an application error. If the count is within the number 2, then I'm just going to insert it into the customer details table, and hence user won't see any error if the count is less than 2. So this is the message what the user gets when as soon as the trigger gets created. So once the trigger gets created, the next part is to insert the values into the customer details using insert statement. And this is the syntax of insert clause. Insert into table name values followed by the attribute values. The next two lines are nothing but they are the example of insert statement which is being done practically, so that I can insert the values into the customer details table for the following attributes as discussed earlier. So the attributes were name, then phone number and address. So here I can see that for the same customer Vinay, I have inserted two different phone number with the same address. So we can insert two phone numbers to the customer Vinay, and it is allowed because the business constraint says that customer can have maximum up to two phone numbers. Now when I check it, I see that there are customers apart from Vinay, which is holding a single phone number and his address is Kumta. So this I may not have shown here. Assume that I had done it earlier. But these two are the values which I have inserted currently. The same is being taken as a snapshot from the practical example and been put here. So at this stage, the values of the tables are Vinay, two values of the same customer Vinay, and one customer of name Vikas. So when I try to insert the third phone number to the customer Vinay, we observe that the trigger is being invoked, which says that there is a violation of a given business constraint. That is, here I'm trying to insert the value to the customer Vinay with the third phone number, which is not being permitted because the business constraint says that. So as soon as I do it, I get an error which says that each customer can have maximum up to two phone number. And this message I have received it from the trigger which I have written. The second message tells me that here I can see the explanation of it. Message which tells where exactly in your code exception has appeared. So this is the line count number 5 where the exception has appeared. Third line tells me that trigger event has been raised due to which operation, and in this case it is because of insert statement. Hence, remember the syntax or the trigger whatever I had written there. So trigger had written is been shown here once again so that I can map it with the output whatever I have got it. So it is before insert operation, hence trigger has been fired during insert operation and it has been fired on the customer details table. Customer phone number count is nothing but the name of the trigger, and this is the condition where the trigger get raised once the value exceeds 2. And this is the message what I have got it there. So I hope now you have understood how to design a trigger for the given business constraint. So the same has been explained using snapshot. That is, first of all, I'm going to check what are the of a table, that is name, phone number, and address. Then after inserting, I'm just checking it. What are the values the table is holding? The table in the sense customer details. So it's Vinay with two different phone numbers. Next, when I try to insert the third value for the customer Vinay, I'm going to trigger because business requirement says that customer can have only up to two phone number, which is met through triggers. So kindly observe here, when I was inserting a phone number to the another customer, say Vikas, I may not get trigger because for this customer, this is the only phone number and hence there is no violation of the condition given there. I try to insert the phone number for the same customer Vinay. Since the count exceeds 2, I'm going to get a trigger over here. So next, we will see the general syntax of trigger. So the general syntax of trigger says that trigger has the many sections, and out of which the very first section is create or replace trigger followed by trigger name. So why this trigger clause is required? This trigger clause is required to create a trigger with a given name or override an existing trigger with the same name. Next, before or after or instead of. So this clause indicates, I can show you the explanation of the above clauses here. So just I'm going to read it out. This clause indicates at what time should the trigger get fired. That is, for example, before or after updating a table. More clause say instead of, which is used to create a trigger specially on a view, because before and update clause cannot be used to create a trigger on a view. Next section is DML event clause. As I have explained you in the beginning, trigger will be fired when a database try to do some manipulation on the data which violates the constraint. So data manipulation commands could be any of the following. They are the DML event clause, DDL event clause, or database event. So under DML, it can be anything like insert or update or delete. Under data definition language, it can be anything like create or alter or drop. And under database event, it can be either login or log off. So this part tells you when is that I'm going to fire a trigger on the table. So on table or view tells me on which table I'm going to invoke a trigger. The same has been explained over here. Insert or update or delete clause determines the triggering event. More than one triggering events can be used together separated by or keyword. The trigger gets fired at all the specified triggering event. And off column name on table name is nothing but column name is used during updation of trigger. This clause is used when you want to trigger an event only when a specific column is updated, and on table name lets you determine the database object on which the trigger is to be created. And in my case, it was customer details table. So the next section is for each row. This clause is used to determine when a trigger must fire when each row gets affected. And this I can say it as a row level trigger. Or trigger should fire for the entire SQL statement just once, which I can say it as statement level trigger. Next, when. When is nothing but the condition which has to be valid for row level trigger, and the trigger is fired only for rows that satisfy the specified condition here. And in my case, it is like if phone count exceeds 2, then only I'm going to raise an application error. Then the last section of the trigger is begin and end, and the body of the trigger is nothing but a SQL statement followed by exception. Exception is an optional for the user because if he wants to handle the exception, then he's going to write exception handling statement. But in my case, I have not done it. So this is the syntax with which you can create a trigger. I hope now you have understood how to implement a trigger for the given business constraint. So for more information, you can refer the references given below. I have took it from these three references. For more information, you can even Google it from other different sites. Thank you.